All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is your favorite warlock practicing necromancer. And today I'm going to answer a question that was put forth on my messenger, and that's Facebook Messenger. And it has to do with initiation, okay? Procedures. Now, the question, I'm going to read this off my cell phone here. I've noticed that many on the left hand path self initiate. I think it's better to be in a group, coven, LA Society, etc. at least once. Do you have or have you ever initiated somebody into the left hand path in person? Do you think that might grow a community or more communities? Well, thought I'd break this down. Initiation comes in two forms: spiritual and group, or religious, if you will. If you are in a religious coven, temple, church, path working, then you would have a initiation process that you would have to go through. And if it's Haitian Voodoo, they have their own system, and normally that's done by spiritual applications. And there's a lot of different things that go along with that. And I believe E.A. Coetting actually did a video on Haitian Voodoo that dealt with initiations and communities and stuff like that, and the processes and all that stuff. But I think it was like an hour and a half, 2 hour type video on Voodoo practices. So I'm not going to really get into that. I'll just guide you to that one. And that's right here on YouTube, by the way. It was a seminar that he did. So, in my experience with Haitian Voodoo, I was initiated by Papa Gadi. He's the ruling Loa of the Gadi family. So, he initiated me through the spirit. If you're going into, say, for an example, the Caribbean traditions, such as, let's go with Palo Mayumbi, they have what is known as the scratching procedure. And this normally takes over a very long, grueling initiation process where you're blindfolded. And they make little slits, they hit you on certain areas, and they keep on going. And you're either on your knees for a long period of time or you're standing for a long period of time and you don't know what is coming. There's a lot of different things that they do depending on the house that you're in. As for initiation processes, being initiated into a coven, a church, a temple, like I said, every single one of them has their own procedures because they have a ranking system. If you go to, say, for an example, the Church of Satan, you go underneath their website, they actually show you the first, second, third, and fourth degrees, where you have a certain amount of years that you are a practicing witch or warlock going in before you can be initiated into something higher. And they got different degrees and different stages. And even in the African Caribbean traditions, there's different levels and degrees that you can be initiated into, and that costs a lot of money if you're doing it that way. And you're looking at $200 a pop right off the bat. Unfortunately and sadly, it is about money these days. So, just to let you know. Now, what's interesting is in Satanism, initiation procedures is that you're just aligning yourself to that temple, okay, into that church or temple. It's not about covens or anything at that point. It's more about you initiating yourself into that coven and that way of life. From there, when you start working with spirits, then you can be initiated through the spirit. Even in Christianity, you are initiated into their church. You're welcomed into their churches, and you when you get baptized, that is basically your initiation process, initiation process, and then you have to sit there and tell your story about what you've done up until that point. Okay, only after that point, when if you're apostolic or Pentecostal, and trust me, this is the damnedest thing, and it is not natural. In my opinion, is grown men crying in a church. Not joking. We're talking people that will jump up and down, run around pews, and bawl their eyes out right down, hoot and holler right at the altar. Okay. Even if they're in the pews, they'll kneel down, pray, and cry, and hoot and holler, and all that stuff. And this is stage two, which is basically being initiated into the spirit of their Savior. Okay. So every single religion, every single path working that's out there has their own form of initiation procedures. Most of the time, when you get into any given path working, it's recommended that you take a certain amount of time to study the material, get to know the spirits, if you will, of that tradition before you make up your mind that you want to be initiated into that system of magic. Okay. In Haitian voodoo, it is recommended that you are initiated by a Hungan or a Mambo into their lineage. And a lot of times when you do it that way, you are serving the light aspects. But if you actually take the time to study Haitian voodoo in any given system, you'll know that they practice both white magic and dark magic. Okay, that's basically working with the Radi family of Loa and the Petwo. That's Petwo family of Loa. Okay, and then you got the realm of the dead, which is the Gadi family. Okay, so you'll be working with like Keflu or Baron Semedi, um, Baroness Dambella, if you will, depending if you're going by New Orleans voodoo, which is a corrupted system of voodoo, in my opinion. If you want to get to know real voodoo, go back to Haitian and Jamaican voodoo, because that's the closest thing you'll find to the actual African based voodoo, unless you know people from Ghana, Nigeria, even Ethiopian, Benin, even that entire region right there. Even if you know people from the Congo region, which is where most of the Caribbean systems come from, even though they're mostly practiced these days by Latinos and Cubans and Latin America, if you will. So they all have their own initiation processes, but if you actually look at it and take the time to realize it, you really don't need a Hungan or a Mambo to initiate you into Voodoo. It's just a matter of getting into the system, getting the material, start drawing the VVs, and getting to know which spirits you need to be working with to be able to get to the spirits that you want to. Like you'd have to go into, say, for example, Papa Legba, and you'd have to get to know his essence. You'd have to get to know what he likes and what he doesn't like. You'll think of him as an overinflated Christian, if you will. That's the best way I can describe it to you, because it, Baron, how should I say this? Papa Legba is a very spoiled type of Loa. He likes to be spoiled rotten with cigars and alcohol, and being acknowledged basically. And don't get me wrong, he's a very good Loa to get along with, very easy to get along with. You just got to spoil him rotten. But he is the gatekeeper. Okay, he is the gatekeeper to all other Loa. So to work with him, you'd have to know this is the spirit that I got to get in contact with to be able to go to any other Loa in the Radi family of Loa. And if you get into the more male violent Petro spirits and want to just, get into the underworld and learn about the underworld and start practicing what would be classified today as satanic magics, working with demons and all that, Keflu would be the top you'd want to go to. And then you'd have to go into his system and working with Simbi and a few others and get to know their ranking system. Okay. Get to work with them, go through their gatekeeper. And the same thing with the Gadi family. And, but even if you think about it, even if you became a Bokor, which is literally frowned upon in the Haitian voodoo community, much like the Marimberos in the Caribbean traditions, you don't really have to be initiated by somebody else. The female variation of that would be the Caplata. So you really, how should I say this? When you become a voodoo zant, okay, and you start practicing voodoo and getting to know everybody, the spirits in the community, the VVs, and all that stuff, the workings, and you start erecting your own peristyle, your own altars for each and every single one of these Loa that you want to work with or feel drawn to. Then you can actually make a pact or a blood pact with them and say, hey, I want to serve you. But they are the ones that tap you on the shoulder. They are the ones that will initiate you. If you want to get into a family lineage and you know that people from your lineage have been in voodoo before or any form of magic, you can go to Papa Gedi and say, hey, I want to initiate myself into your magic and work with the spirits of the dead. Can you bring forth my ancestors and initiate me into the ancestral lineage and so forth? But the two main forms of initiation is done through even a church, temple, or coven, or by the spirit. Those are the two main things. Now, a lot of people don't realize that in the old days, this type of thing did not occur. It was when you went into a temple or you went into a religious practice, let's say, for example, the Shem priesthood, about the Shaolin monks, if you will. They had a grueling procedure, okay, that they did. For example, the Shaolin monks, they're very disciplined. Their training is very vigorous and very disciplined. If you've ever watched the videos on their training styles and the regiments, you would know that that's no serious, that's no amateur, practice right there. But if you think about it, and you actually take the time to understand that there's degrees, you have a teacher that reports to a grand master. Okay, so you would have like lieutenants, if you will, in different divisions. You'd have those who are responsible for prayers, those who are responsible for cleaning the temples, those who are warrior monks, if you will. This is the Shaolin path. If you get into the Shem priesthood, for an example, which is the first, second, and third dynasty of Egypt, you'll notice that you had the same exact stature. You had those that performed services for the communities. You had those that were responsible for cleaning the temple, those that were responsible for religious worship, those that performed the religious rites and ceremonies and rituals. Okay, and so forth up until the top of the food chain, if you will. Their forms of initiation just basically means that you give up everything of the world and you live according to their creeds, their oaths, if you will, their religious oath and their creeds and all that fun stuff. Okay. Um, Now, if you are going into, say, the early form of Christianity, let's go with Catholicism. Okay. Before the Knights of Templar, you had what is called the Hashishin. Okay. The Hashishin was a Middle Eastern assassins group. They were known as Samsara. Okay. These people were actually highly trained in combat, but they were also religious monks. Okay. One of the Shem priesthoods, one of the surviving Shem priesthoods from Giza, actually founded this back in the 6th century. They had their own ranking systems, just like everybody else. They had their own initiation processes of training, from being a prostate, a beginner, a neophyte, if you will, where you've sworn allegiance, you've given up everything of the world, and you dedicate yourself specifically to that path. You had the student, and or apprentice, and the master. Okay, and you'd work your way up, but it was all based off knowledge. It was based off experience. It was based off everything. So that was the ranking system of initiations in there. Even in the Knights of Templar, you had an initiation process where you had to be branded. Okay, think of your religious tattoos today. Okay, that is a form of initiation and into that particular tradition. You you kneel down in front of a grand master who has a sword on your shoulder, and you recite a mantra, if you will, an oath, particularly an oath of loyalty, swearing allegiance to their God and all their your brothers, sisters, and the church and all that stuff, the Vatican, and you would become a member. But and then you would have to go into their grueling regiments of training. Now they had different divisions, and one of them was known as the Forsaken. These were knights who had been practicing necromancers, black magicians, and they're normally about 3 or 4 at a time. There's actually stories from scrolls that you can actually go back into, and you can even look underneath Google, or you can go underneath YouTube, and you can actually learn about this particular group of monks. They were holy monks trained in the art of combat. They were known as the protectors of the crossroads that were used in the holy wars in the Middle East. Okay, right up until the church, betrayed them like they've done everything else and everyone else. So they have their regiments, their own initiations. So does everybody have their own form of initiation? Yes. But do you have to go through those initiations, or can you do it yourself? Now, you can do it yourself. There are, let's just call it the way it is, books and works by authors out there that have actually shown both self-initiation and coven or temple variations of initiations. Okay. Myrmidon Pontifex Maximus actually has one of those. That is, you have self-initiation, and then you have one of a group. Even if you go into, let's go with let's go into, trying to think here. Let's go into the path of Satanism. There's a lot of authors out there who have written their own works. They've put in their works of self-initiation, and then again in a group or ceremonial. Now, in a ceremonial, you've got the entire coven, the entire temple, the entire church that shows up for that initiation process. And this is normally done by the clergy within those temples and those satanic sects. So even if you go into the initiation of pagan and Wiccans practices, you have both ceremonial and ritualistic, meaning self or group. Okay. And if it's a group, it's normally the priestess or the priest that will initiate you. Okay. And if it's Wiccan and pagan, well, guess what? It would be the priestess, because the priest really doesn't have the stature or the leg to stand on in those religions. It's all feminine at the top. So just to clarify that. All right. So, have I ever initiated somebody into the left hand path? Well, that is a kind of a crossroads, because there is no left hand path, there is no right hand path. Magic is magic. And if you are bringing somebody in, then you give them the tools to initiate themselves. Okay. You can show them the path. There's an old expression: you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink. Okay. If somebody wants to initiate into a particular field or practice, then you show them how to do it. You give them instruction and they do it. Okay. I have not personally initiated anyone into any given system. I let them do it themselves, because it is their choice, not mine. Okay. I've had 2 covens that I belonged to and ran over 35 years. And I can tell you that over that time, I've seen people come and go. I've seen them die off. And then, some of us just go our own way. But initiation is normally done by the individual. Even if you go back into the old world, you have the Strigoi, the Strega, the Hexa, the Agi, or the Eshi. Okay, going to the mage or the sage, there's always an apprentice and a master. Okay, so if you want to learn magic from somebody, like say a mage, then you would be a sage in training to become a magi. Okay, you would become an apprentice sorcerer, or a sorcerer's apprentice, if you will. But that's a whole different thing. That's not initiating into a current or a path as we know it today. Back then, it was more about understanding the sciences and the sorcery, from herbalism to alchemy, the forging of materials that one would need along their path. And when you get into a religious and supernatural or spiritual manner, then you have to learn about the spirits, you have to learn about the mechanics, all of that stuff. So that alone, I would not say that you had to initiate into a particular field. There have been orders where, how should I say this? There have been orders where people have been initiated into over time. But I mean, think of the temples like the cult of Anubis or the cult of Artemis, for just to name a couple. The cult of Athena. You know, these, you kind of had to be initiated, and a lot of that was brutal, but it was more about understanding the mechanics of everything. So, do you have to be initiated into a covenant church by a member? No. All you need to do is initiate yourself. I mean, think of Anton Szandor LaVey's Satanic Bible. In the book of Belial, there's actually the invocation to Satan. And this is where you are initiating yourself to him in person. Okay? Even if you get into certain temples, like the one I belong to, that I've initiated, that I joined a few years back when I became a necromancer, there is a self-initiation period. It's called, or you can go and have somebody initiate you there. But outside of that, like I said, you're initiated mostly by the spirit, and that's by other spirits. Okay, doesn't matter if it's the demons, doesn't matter if it's the angels, doesn't matter if it's the jinn, the devi, the pagan gods and goddesses that you worship, the orisha. They all initiate you in the spirit. Okay. And the physical application, all uh, let me put it to you this way. If you're initiated into a house, if you're initiated into a temple, all that is a physical construct. It's basically saying you've separated from your former lifestyle and you are beginning anew in your current path working. You're dedicating yourself, your life to that particular, path working that you're beginning your journey in. That is all that is. That is all that is. Okay. But initiation is normally done solo. Okay. Because it is not somebody else's wish, it is yours. It is your desire to join a particular field of practice and make it a lifestyle. That is yours and yours alone. Do you think that might grow a community or more communities? I think we got way too many communities as it is. Because if you actually think about it, for hundreds of thousands of years there was no communities in witchcraft, Satanism, Wicca, pagan, whatever. If you actually take the time to study anthropology, if you start practicing archaeological aspects, you get into the old world through folklore, you get into mythology, you'll notice that all these practitioners were always solo. The Bokor or the Hangdan, the Mambo, the witch, warlock, whatever you want to call them, title wise, is just that, a title, you know. And in the tribal aspects, these individuals stayed close. Their tents were literally next to the king or the tribal king of that tribe. And nothing was done within that tribe without first consulting that sorcerer. Okay. Even if you go to European traditions, you have the Strega, you have the Hexa. Okay. And these individuals normally lived either on the outskirts of a village or they lived out in the boondocks somewhere. Think of the mythology of Baba Yaga living out in the woods. She was the old hag living out in the woods. She had the house with that moved around on chicken legs. Okay. And she was known as the old crone, the old hag. And she's associated with Kakashi the Deathless. And his mythology aspects, his folklore. So there was no community of practitioners back then. They didn't meet for witch trial, for sabbats or any of that stuff right up until Christianity came along. Even if you get into things like Simon's Necronomicon or let's say, for example, Zoroastrianism, the Rosicrucians or the Masonic Lodge, you have to actually be invited into a lot of these um, practices, and a lot of times they're Christianized anyways. So even the Golden Dawn system was Christianized, but they practiced the Qliphoth and the Hermetic systems. So their annotations were you had to be tapped on the shoulder and say, hey, you have to prove yourself and what you're going to be able to do for this order, this foundation, this temple, this lodge. Okay. So there are different traditions that have their own variation. But a lot of the time, when you get into, for an example, modern day Illuminati or, these scam artists, or you get into, say, for an example, the Golden Dawn, you get into the Masonic Lodge, these people want money from you. Okay, so you literally go in and you have to work your ass off to study and practice, but you got to prove your loyalty within a form of annotation, much like going to a frat house in college. But you're more of a practitioner of applied sciences, if you will. You're learning the tools and the traits of a mage and a sage perspective, but that's it. Okay. So the further back you go when it comes to initiation, you'll realize that a lot of the BS that you have today did not exist in the old way, in the old world. So, in my opinion, it is better to be initiated in the spirit because it is about you and those spirits. Doesn't matter, like I said, if it's a demigod, doesn't matter if it's the gods, the demons, the Orisha, the Loa, the angelics, if you will, if you're John D. and Edward Kelly, Edward Arthur White working with both angels and demons. You know, the Grimoire systems have their own form of initiation. One of the best forms of self-initiation that I've come across is by Turksu Zij, which is basically Jesus Christ spelled backwards, but with a K. And he actually did one that was out of the demonic Bible. And this one was actually one of the best ones because you're basically consecrating your entire body to not only the forces of darkness, but to Satan and Lucifer. Okay. And that was like I said, the Embassy of Lucifer, and I don't even know if that group is still around. I think they've basically disappeared mostly, just like the ONA from the 18th century. You have this modern day ONA, type initiations, but even Michael W. Ford's Luciferianism has their form of initiations. But out of the consecrations and initiation, the best one that I've come across would be Turksu Zij's version from the demonic Bible. And that's something that could be altered into your own state of initiation processes as well. And it's so simplistic and easy that it's fitting. Like I said, even if you get into the Devil's Bible by Myrmidon Pontifex Maximus, he's got a 3-night initiation process in that. And it's all unique. It's all uniquely done. So, and this is traditional Satanism, by the way, in that version, just like the ONA and the ironic part is in the first night with him, with Myrmidon's version, is you're basically saying your intent. The second night, you're ripping up your old uniform, your old habits, and you're burning them and giving them to the devil, if you will. And then on the third night, you're standing there naked. You got your new robes, you got your new ritual wear, and you are anointing yourself in the name of Satan and Lucifer on the third night. So you have your intention, and then you have your separation, and then you have your initiation process of swearing allegiance. So some initiations would be like the witch's pyramid, the witch's oath, where you recite it, and other times it's a matter of doing a ceremonial or ritualistic type of initiation. You can learn from the ancestors. You can be initiated into a peristyle, a house, a lodge, whatever. But that's just my opinion, and that's just from my own studies and practices of what I've learned over 35 plus years of being in the occult. So, with that said, I hope this has been educational. I hope it's been enlightening. And it's up to you on which path you want to go. Do you want to spend a lot of money and become initiated into a church, temple, or coven? Or do you want to self-initiate and save yourself a lot of time? Because in the end of the day, it comes down to you and those spirits that you work with. It comes down to you and your religious practice and where you take it. You're the one enlightening yourself. No one else is. So with that said, have a good day. And until next time.